The rebuild is on. What's going on, Dolphins fans? Welcome to this week's edition of Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk. General Manager Chris Grier was let go on Friday, one day after the Dolphins got blasted by Baltimore. What's next for this franchise this season and beyond? We are here to break that down for you. I am Chris Perkins, your South Florida Sun Sentinel Dolphins columnist. That is David Furones, your South Florida Sun Sentinel Dolphins writer. Furones, I mean, what do you make of the last few days when you consider getting blown away by Baltimore, Chris Grier losing his job, Tua and Mike McDaniel still here, Champ Kelly as the interim GM, Jaelan Phillips being dealt? It's a lot of change going on here.
Yeah, a lot of change. It's really the first time in a while that it's been this level of change for the franchise. You got to think back to the rebuild originally, just that transformational period, 2019, as Grier took over as the franchise's top decision maker. He was already GM, but, Mike Tannenbaum had then departed at that point once Grier took the reins, and then grabbing Brian Flores, eventually moving on from Brian Flores and bringing in Mike McDaniel. And it's been Grier and McDaniel tied at the hip, as we've mentioned so many times. And now finally there is a break in that. So something new for the Dolphins.
Yeah, it's incredible. It is incredibly turbulent times here for the Miami Dolphins. We want to welcome all our viewers watching on YouTube. As usual, we invite you to leave a question, a comment, a thought on our live chat, the best place to get intelligent Dolphins conversation. We also want to let you know that some of these questions will be answered today live online. Others will be answered in an online Q&A either today or tomorrow. So get your questions and thoughts in. We'd also like to tell you that if you miss any part of this show, you can catch the podcast on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. And finally, we'd like to invite you to sign up for the Fans Flash, our weekly newsletter, which you can do by scanning the QR code that will be shown on your screen. All right, Furones, we're going to take on a few topics today. The first one is whether Chris Grier was made a scapegoat. Mike McDaniel and Tua are still there. Chris Grier is gone, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about what happens the remainder of the 2025 season. Is Tua going to be benched? Are they going to take a look at younger players? Mike McDaniel still probably needs to win games to be considered to return next year. He'll be returning next week, I think.
Is he week to week?
That's right.
That's not what we're hearing. We're hearing he'll stay through the remainder of at least this season.
That's what we're thinking, right? That's what we're thinking. Our Furones bonus. David Furones is going to tell us how long it's going to take these Dolphins to win a playoff game. And then finally, we will have our prediction time, Dolphins and Bills. You guys know the Bills have beaten the Dolphins 7 straight games. They are 1-7, the Dolphins, in the McDaniel era against the Buffalo Bills. As we always say around here, there's an ocean of possibilities. Let's dive in. All right, there we go, baby. There we go. Now I know we're ready. All right, so Furones, let's talk about Chris Grier and whether he was made a scapegoat here. There's a couple of things that I like that Stephen Ross did. Number one, he did not raise season ticket prices. And so that kind of helps soothe the fan base a little bit, although that's a very small percentage of fans, the season ticket holders, that are going to be affected by that. The other thing Steve Ross did is he gave the fans their sacrificial body, right? You guys wanted some blood? Here, I'll offer you Chris Grier. Is that the end of it? Has Stephen Ross done enough, and was Chris Grier scapegoated here, do you think?
A little bit, I guess. Whoever you want to place the blame on for underachieving, for this underachieving all-in run that started in 2022, it reached the peak in 2023, and then this year and last was kind of an attempt to keep it afloat with diminishing rosters. Whoever you want to blame, whether that's Tua, whether that's McDaniel, behind all of it, honestly, it would be GM Chris Grier. And to another level, owner Stephen Ross, who has backed Grier and has given him this responsibility and has kept him there for as long as he has. But Grier does have a hand in every current player on the Dolphins roster and their contract. So if you want to blame Tua because he has been a disappointment since the team gave him the 4-year, $212 million contract, Grier signed off on that. If you want to say it was McDaniels doing, convincing Grier to trust him with that kind of money, to trust Tua with that kind of money, or if you want to just point to McDaniels' shortcomings as a coach, well, Grier was behind that hiring too, involved in bringing him on board. Now, Tua and McDaniel deserve blame in their own right, of course, but I'm just saying you could understand why it was time with Grier. What did surprise me was the timing mid-season when normally you'd see a coach go in the middle of the year, but I think Ross probably felt pressured just to do something, and it's clear he likes Mike McDaniel and didn't want to cut him loose yet. And while he obviously liked Grier too, he had to do something. Now, I've always said that the two were tied at the hip. I started off today saying that. I've said so many times, so much so that they should be going down together. I guess Ross wants to see McDaniel's operation the rest of the way this season. Maybe it will be up to the next GM. Maybe Ross directs this GM to give it a year with McDaniel before it's then ultimately his call. I think a clean break is what I prefer in this situation, both GM and coach. But I will say this about Mike. If he's wanted to take on the rebuild, I could see him actually being better in that role than the one he was thrown into of being a young coach trying to handle a veteran group with win now expectations. I think he would actually be better suited to handle a rebuild if the Dolphins do go in that direction. It's just you kind of had your 4 years with him where he underperformed with a lot already on the table in terms of roster. But I do think he would just be better suited to handle a young core and try to bring them up than the situation of, all right, you got to handle Tyreek Hill's persona. You got to handle Jalen Ramsey, and you need to take a team that's ready to compete and go chase a playoff win. I think he'd be better suited for a rebuild type of thing if the Dolphins do keep him around, but he was given his 4 years here too.
Yeah, he was. I actually think the opposite on McDaniel. I think he was better suited for the veteran team as opposed to the younger team, because I haven't seen any player development under McDaniel. We've seen Devon Achane develop. We've seen, I don't know if you could say Jalen Waddle develop, but Jalen Waddle definitely has not gotten worse. He did develop Tua, but that's about it. That's about it. You didn't, I don't know if you could say that he's developed Kader Kohu or Javon Holland or Rob Hunt or any of those other guys.
I think we're seeing Patrick Paul.
Better.
Patrick Paul right now.
Patrick Paul is developing. Patrick Paul is definitely developing. I'll say this, that I said that I'm a proponent. I've been saying this for a couple of weeks of making the clean sweep. Get out Grier, get out McDaniel, get out Tua. And I know Tua is going to cost you a lot of financial pain, but I just think it's better to make the clean sweep right now. I've also said that I blame Grier 51% and McDaniel 49%. Look, this was the best talent the Dolphins have had in 2 decades, and Chris Grier, I guess, was mostly responsible for gathering it, although I do view this as almost a 50-50 type of a deal, but Grier was the GM, so I'll give him 51% of the credit, but that's why I also give him 51% of the blame, because he's got the title of GM. But he did get you Tyreek and Teron and Ramsey, and I don't know who got Vic Fangio in here, but he got you a lot of Calais Campbell. He got you a lot of top talent. And what does Mike McDaniel do? He goes 30-30 with this talent. How do you go 500 with this talent? And that's why I think that Mike McDaniel should go, because he had this golden opportunity and he goes 30-30. He's a 500 coach. Joe Philbin could go 500 with this talent. Brian Flores, Adam Gase, a lot of former coaches, Tony Sperano. I'm not sure about Cam Campbell.
Maybe us. Maybe us.
Yeah, let's not get crazy. I understand that. I would love to think I could go 500 with the Kansas City Chiefs, but I don't think I could, actually, to be honest with you.
Well, the Chiefs right now are barely 500.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I could do almost as good as Andy Reid right now, couldn't I? Yeah. So, and look, here's the other part of that. I think that Mike McDaniel is probably around here as long as Tua is around here, because Mike McDaniel is good at handling Tua. He did revive Tua's career. He brought him back from the dead. And so, look, I still maintain that you can, this is going to sound stupid. I still maintain that you can win a Super Bowl with Tua. I still maintain you can win a playoff game with Tua. Yes, but you've got to surround this guy with the right coaching and the right players. Like he's, and I think the same deal is true for Jalen Hurts, who I know he just won a Super Bowl, but he wasn't the number one reason that you won a Super Bowl. The same thing is true for Jared Goff. The same thing is true for Brock Purdy / Mac Jones out in San Francisco, right? That you give them the right coaching and the right system, and they can make some stuff happen. I'm not saying that all of these guys can win a Super Bowl. I do think that Tua can. I do think Goff can. I do think Purdy can, but they aren't going to be the number one reason. I think with Philly, you could say it was the defense. You could say it was the offensive line. You could say it was Saquon Barkley. And then you could say that Jalen Hurts was number two after any of those things. I think that the Dolphins are kind of in that same situation with Tua. But Tua was 2-10 against playoff teams in 2023 and 2024. As a starter, according to Pro Football Focus, Tua has a 27-23 record under Mike McDaniel. He's got a 40-31 record overall, but it's 27-23 under Mike McDaniel. So that's not very impressive, but I do think that Mike McDaniel gets the most out of Tua. But look, those two records of Mike McDaniel being 30-30 and Tua being 27-23, that's not good enough with this talent. That's why I say the clean sweep has to be made. How much credit, Furones, do you give Chris Grier for collecting that talent?
Yeah, I mean, I think he did do a tremendous job of collecting just an assortment of talent, which is why and we both agree on this, because I've said many times, I agree. It's both of them should go down together if it goes awry, and now we've kind of reached a point where it went awry. I'm talking about how we used to talk, before this season has played out the way it has, and I guess that's why we speak in those terms on Mike McDaniel, is that there were greater expectations for the 2022 team, the 2023 team. Remember, 2021 with a lot less talent and Brian Flores and the team starting 1-7, that team finished 9-8. And then what was the Dolphins' record in 22 with Tyreek Hill, with Teron Armstead, adding Bradley Chubb at the trade deadline, with an 8-3 start to the season? It was 9-8 also. And then they were just able to make the playoffs that year with the way the AFC worked out. And 2023, like you said, to your point about how Tua could lead a Super Bowl winning team in the same way that Jalen Hurts did that, in the same way that Brock Purdy of the 49ers has gotten there and been so close. If everything around him is perfect, that 23 team was just about that. They were playing for the number one seed with 2 weeks remaining. They had a 3-game lead on the mighty Buffalo Bills in the AFC East with 5 weeks remaining, and blew all of that to then end up in the wild card and lose on the road against Kansas City, the eventual Super Bowl champions that year. All those things were on the table if that team maybe stays healthy. I would imagine if Sean Payton had that situation, if Andy Reid, if some of the better coaches in the NFL, they might finish the job with that assortment of talent. But I think for Grier, yes, it was a great collection of talent, but maybe kind of like this hodgepodge of just getting guys in, kind of like how maybe someone might formulate a Madden roster of just, all right, let's bring in, I could bring in Tyreek Hill, one of the top receivers. Okay, I could bring in Jalen Ramsey. And then, does it all really work together? Which maybe was one of the challenges that Mike McDaniel had in front of him, on top of the personalities in the locker room, which for the most part, were good personalities. It's just a few that were difficult. But that was kind of like a loud minority when it's like Jalen Ramsey and
Right.
Tyreek Hill is liable to just say and do whatever.
Right.
So it was kind of like a loud minority, even though like usually 50 or 51 of the 53-man roster was just like really solid guys that you could count on.
Right. Exactly. And I'll tell you this, a phrase to look out for or to listen for in the coming weeks and when people discuss the Chris Grier dismissal, or they mutually parted ways. I shouldn't say dismissal, right? He wasn't fired.
When are we allowed? When are we allowed to just start saying firing? Because no one like 2 years later goes, oh yeah, when Chris Grier and the Dolphins mutually parted ways. It's like you say it the day of, but so when does that shift happen?
I'm gonna say probably sometime after the bye week. It's gonna be okay to after it settles in a little more, right?
That's when we refer to when the Dolphins fired Chris Grier.
Right, that's right, exactly. And in that facility, it will probably always be frowned upon, that terminology. But out here in the streets, Furones, I think it'll be okay. I do think that Grier was made a scapegoat to this point. If Tua and McDaniel stay, then I'm going to say that Grier was definitely made a scapegoat. We'll see if this is just kind of a temporary thing, that you didn't want to rip the Band-Aid off all at once, and that McDaniel will go after the season. But if it stays like this, if Tua and McDaniel come back and Grier is the fall guy, he was definitely made the scapegoat in this situation. And the phrase I'm telling you to listen. Yeah, and the phrase I'm telling you to listen for is the moves that Chris Grier didn't want to make. That was a phrase that was given to me a couple of weeks ago when I was talking to somebody and they told me, yeah, but there's a lot of moves that Grier didn't want to make. And I didn't really think about it at the time, but they mutually part ways, and now the Jaelan Phillips move is made. And so it kind of makes you wonder, I wonder if there was something to that. I wonder if there was a reluctance to make moves, a week earlier or 2 months earlier or something like that. But the moves that Grier didn't want to make, that was a phrase that was given to me. Before we continue, let's say what's up to some of our viewers out here. Bigotis 1775, Fitzgrass. Good to see you. EJ Barrow, Malby Crazy, Mark Jones, Dave Harvard checking in from San Diego as usual. And Ray 280, Comrade 3611, Louis M, B Stuck the Poet, CLD 170. By the way, let me tell y'all, I got some new contacts, so I'm not like squinting like I was last week, like I have been all season. I got some new contacts, and so I'm able to read a little bit better. Lo-fi anime.
No, Jameis Squinston over here.
That's right. Exactly, man. The squinting to see the play call and all that. Yeah, hopefully that's done. Berserker Finn, Rob, Pete's Takes in the house. Dana Bice here. Go Miami 1. Let's see. Go Miami 1 says scapegoat. Really? He just plain sucked. You seem to be forgetting all the awful draft picks, non-signings, trades, etc. I hear you, Go Miami 1. By the way, what's up to Rogue Scorpio? What's up to CCRR 8020? I hear you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. I was actually just gonna respond on your behalf. I think what you're trying to say is that him being the only one to go, as opposed to everyone, which is you go ahead and say it.
Right. That's it.
I don't need to speak for you. I don't need to speak for you.
That's right. Yeah, if he's the only one, then he is being scapegoated. But to me, Tua and McDaniel also need to go. You can't just have Chris Grier go and then you say, okay, we're going to be good now. The on-field product, I had a bigger problem with the on-field product than the talent accumulation. Let me throw this out at you here, Furones. Dana Bice says, trading Tyreek, ? Let me throw this at you. Is it crazy to think that if Tyreek's rehab goes well, he comes back next season at a discounted price, just thinking, well, okay, if you get the band back together, Tua, Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, Mike McDaniel, maybe you can speed this process up. I'm not sure that Tua is much without Tyreek. And Tyreek does not go along with a rebuilding plan, either financially, off-field behavior-wise, right? If you're trying to do the culture change thing, age-wise, because he's going to be in his 30s. Well, he is in his 30s. So it doesn't make sense on a lot of levels, Furones. But do you think if Tua and McDaniel are back and Tyreek's rehab goes well, do you think it's worth a chance, a shot? Does it make sense to invite Tyreek back?
Here's the thing: we don't even know who's going to be making the decisions. So, so it's so
Correct.
difficult to
As the
predict
GM,
because
right.
the person who would decide on all this isn't in the building right now, unless interim GM Champ Kelly, who I always have to caution myself not to call him Chip Kelly. I'm still not used to Champ Kelly.
Right.
Unless he knocks it out the park in the next couple months and he kills it in interviews, and then Stephen Ross believes he should be the one to go take on the permanent role. I'm sure he'll be in the running, considering that he did get the interim job just now, and would have kind of a season of a head start on any other candidate, just knowing the guys in the building, both around him in the front office, and then also the player personnel, having a year around the locker room as well. But if not him, then the person making this decision probably isn't even around right now. But I could see a scenario, albeit probably unlikely, where yes, if they decide we're not moving on from Tua because of the contract, and Mike McDaniel is being retained for another year. You already have Jalen Waddle locked up, assuming that in the next couple of hours, no team blows the Dolphins away with a first-round pick or a tremendous offer on Jalen Waddle, with Champ Kelly now expected to have everything on the table for the right price, as opposed to where Chris Grier certainly had several assets that were off limits for other teams. Then maybe, if you're bringing back all those other pieces, then why not, and if you're still trying to be as competitive as possible, but I think that would just delay the inevitable, really, if we're being realistic. I think, yeah, this whole core has run its course. So that's why going into the season, I felt like clean break, if it goes awry, which it has, of Grier, McDaniel. Now, with Tua's contract situation, that's a huge hurdle for whoever's making that decision, because then they have to decide if you just stick with them for 1 year, which then, does he end up getting you like 6 or 7 wins? And then, because it would be the perfect tank situation is if you have $99 million in dead money going to a quarterback that you cut, and now you really just cannot field that competitive of a roster because you just don't have the cap space to do it, as you send off some of your better talents for draft picks that you stockpile. That would really set the Dolphins up in prime position after 2026 to then have some really high-end draft picks in 2027. Right. So that's one way to go about it. But yeah, it's hard to predict right now. And if Mike and Tua are coming back and Tyreek goes, then I wouldn't rule it out.
Yeah, I wouldn't rule it out, but you're right. Let's see who the decision makers are. But at this point, I wouldn't rule it out. I wouldn't totally rule it out. All right, Furones, let's migrate on to segment 2. What happens to the remainder of the 2025 season? And, we'll go into this with me thinking I just don't think that Tua and Mike McDaniel can thrive without Tyreek. And, we got a couple of comments here. CCRR8029 says Reek will be back if he doesn't retire. And then somebody else, Dana Bice did say it would be crazy to bring back Tyreek. Chuck Cole says, hate to say it, but if Tyreek does come back, there's no more threat of Tyreek. Just can't see him coming back to a form that would incite fear in opposing defenses. But go to 1775 says trade Tua to the Rams if Matt Stafford retires for the Lambs. For the Lambs. So let me
Lambs?
Yeah, right. The silence of the lambs. That would be the silence of the lambs if Tua went there. Did I say that out loud? Anyway, so let me ask you this: is there anything that you like there? Either Tua coming back, there's no more threat of Tua trading. I mean Tyreek. Tyreek coming back, there's no more threat of Tyreek because he won't have those skills. Trading Tua anywhere. Does any of that work for you as we talk about what happens in 2025 with this team and beyond?
Yeah, are we talking about Tua possibly any deal right now in the coming hours?
Any deal right now or beyond
yeah.
or beyond? Yeah.
No, I mean I wouldn't see any team taking on Tua and that contract. And then I wouldn't see like there's some scenarios thrown out about that the Dolphins would then send draft picks to a team to then have them take Tua off their hands. So what would be the point of that? If you're going to rebuild, then you want to stockpile picks. You don't want to give picks up. And so what if another team takes the cap hit from Tua if you're going to have non-competitive seasons for the years of the cap hit anyway? So that would make no sense to me. So I think, you just got to swallow the pill with Tua. Honestly, that's the way I look at it.
Hey, let me ask you this, Furones. When we talk about Tua, let's say that this team gets to 2-9. They lose their next two games to Buffalo and to Washington. Is it time to take a look at Zach Wilson and Quinn Ewers? And again, I float this idea, or I ask this question. You might need a bridge quarterback. Maybe Quinn Ewers is the next Brock Purdy, the 7th-round pick guy. Maybe Zach Wilson is that next first-round rehab, like Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones and what's our guy here in Tampa? I can't from Cleveland,
Baker
from Oklahoma. Baker Mayfield. Wow, I just blanked out. So why not try to figure out if one of those guys is your bridge quarterback, or maybe if you reach 2-9. You can find out, does one of those guys deserve to come back as your number 2? Is there a downside if you go to 2-9? We pretty much know you're not making the playoffs now, but 2-9 ensures another losing record. You're not going anywhere. Do you start taking looks at the backup quarterback position first of all?
Yeah, I think at 2-9, especially, you'll be coming back from Spain at that point with the bye week. Then that might be the time for a change. You always kind of look at the bye week where, let's say, if Grier wasn't fired and we didn't have the assurance of Mike McDaniel remaining for at least the remainder of the regular season, that would have been one that we circled. That after the mini bye that we just had, coming back from Spain with a bye week, that would have been one that we circled as far as a potential franchise change. So now, given what we know that Chris Grier, he's the one to go. Mike is staying for the time being. That could be a change that does occur at that point in time. And then you would come back from the bye with a home game against the Saints. So that could be a nice situation for either backup quarterback to go in. It's not yes, it's still an NFL team, but you're at home and you're playing another one of the lower level teams this season with the Jets to follow. You could have the storyline of Zach Wilson going back to MetLife to face his former team in the Jets, or if it's Quinn Ewers, whatever it might be. So yeah, at 2-9, that is something that is a point where I would say, at that point, what are you really doing putting Tua out there, especially since he doesn't have Tyreek Hill? Let's just see what these guys do in terms of operation. But, of course, as Mike McDaniel said yesterday, he's not anywhere near there yet, but I could see that happening. I think the franchise is more open at this point to seeing what they have in someone else. And really, that could be a saving grace for Mike McDaniel if he puts Zach Wilson out there and he starts playing well. Then all of a sudden, he looks right for bringing in this reclamation project who, you and I, we have criticized, I know I have for sure, of choosing Zach Wilson in a year where you were trying to win, of choosing Zach Wilson as your backup quarterback when it's vital to have what I believe should be a proven, veteran, experienced, reliable backup quarterback who could handle the reins of the team, who could handle a Tyreek Hill being in the huddle with him, and can keep a team afloat that's trying to compete if and whenever Tua goes down, which he went down a couple of occasions in 2024. That's what we were coming off of then. So that would be kind of it would flip the script on the Zach Wilson move if Mike McDaniel brings him in and is like, see, I was able to make something out of Zach Wilson after everyone was down on him. Or, hey, in a few months with Quinn Ewers, look what I was able to get out of Quinn Ewers. And then that could be something like Brian Dable all of a sudden with the Giants is a lot safer once Jackson Dart came in there and started had a couple of games where he was lighting it up. Now he doesn't have Cam Scatterboo, but I mean Brian Dable was a hot seat coach, and then all of a sudden, whoa, you can't get rid of him now. You might have your coach quarterback tandem with the Giants in Dable and Jackson Dart. So if one of those could be Mike McDaniel's saving grace type of thing, that might be the time where you start to transition into looking for that.
When we talk about what happens for the remainder of 2025, what happens until 4 p.m. today is a big factor. So do you think anybody else gets traded? And I'm looking mostly at Bradley Chubb, Minkah Fitzpatrick, maybe Matthew Judon. I think Chubb is a prime candidate to me. Minkah would be second. And, I think that, look, once Jaelan Phillips is gone, you might as well do the Chubb move. I think there's probably still a market out there for edge rushers. And look, Chubb is getting up there in age. I think Chubb is 29, I believe. And I haven't really seen that much from him this year. I have no reason to think I'm going to see more from him next year. So maybe you kind of get ahead of the curve and get something from him for him. Minkah Fitzpatrick, I'm not sure he's been happy a day that he's been here. He, and I remember when Minkah was here before, he was a rookie. He looks a little bit withdrawn in that locker room. He mixes with teammates, but he's always just kind of got this blank look on his face. There's not a whole lot of excitement there. He hasn't made very many big plays on the field. He's been solid, but he hasn't been good. He's not headed anywhere near a Pro Bowl this season. I could see Chubb and or Minkah being dealt. And then as far as Matthew Judon, okay, whatever. But you do need some edge rushers, right? So maybe you bring up McClendon from the practice squad. I guess you can get some edge rushers, but I wouldn't be mad at the Dolphins if Chubb and or Minkah got dealt by 4 p.m. Do you anticipate anything else today, Furones?
Yeah, and as we broach this topic, I do have to refresh Twitter or X and make sure there's no breaking news. I have my notifications off as I'm recording my phone for our podcast. So I do have to make sure on the laptop that nothing's going on. I don't see anything yet. I think we're clear right now as far as any breaking news while we are recording the show. But yeah, I would be shocked if there isn't another move made before 4 p.m. I think you saw the first domino to fall. I believe we're expecting a lot more to happen. I don't know if a lot is the right word. At least another move, I would say. So the word always was one of either Jaelan Phillips and Bradley Chubb previously, but I think that was when Chris Grier was still around. So would Champ Kelly see it differently now? I think especially since you're 2-7, then you'd be doing some of these veterans a service if you went ahead and sent them to a contender where they can go ahead and make something of this season. So for Jaelan Phillips, who I'm sure, and he had always said this, he wanted to stay in Miami. He met his fiance here. They're having a baby together. They had the whole gender reveal just weeks ago. He's trying to build a family down here in South Florida. So I'm sure he did not want to leave South Florida, but an NBC Sports Philadelphia reporter caught him, I believe, at the airport in Philadelphia landing, and he seemed pretty happy in that interview because now all of a sudden you realize, oh, okay, the grass is a little greener, maybe Kelly greener over there in Philadelphia. A reference to their epic Kelly green uniforms.
Right.
Where you're on the defending Super Bowl champs now, and you have a serious shot to go win a Super Bowl this year on a roster that really could use a player at your position. Like, all of a sudden, you got to look at that like, oh, this isn't that bad. Yeah. So for a Bradley Chubb, that could work out well. Give him a shot to go be a valued pass rushing addition on another team. Minka Fitzpatrick for sure. I think. He's got to feel bad just going from Pittsburgh unexpectedly, getting sent to Miami, and then Pittsburgh is the top of the AFC North right now, and then he's got no shot really at competing here. So I bet similar to Jimmy Butler last year, that would bring his joy back. It would bring him his joy back.
That's right.
So if
That's right. John Morant, the latest one on that.
What's that?
Right. Yeah, John Morant. John Morant is the latest one who has no happiness. Right?
Oh, yes, right. Yeah, joy is the word being thrown around in his interviews. So, Bradley Chubb, Minka Fitzpatrick would be some of the more valuable pieces that I could see. I mean, obviously, Waddle or Achane, I think the Dolphins would have to get blown away by an offer. So I don't see it realistically happening unless a team just really goes all in for it, and the Dolphins and makes an offer the Dolphins can't refuse. Matthew Judon would barely move the needle. I mean, he's not even playing on this Dolphins roster, or he's barely getting snaps. So at this stage, I don't think he would be such a huge addition. That might be more like the way the 23 Dolphins try to add Bruce Irvin and James Houston, or Justin Houston.
Justin Houston.
Yeah, that'd be more of a move like that. I could see some things happening.
Yep. So, all right. So, Furones, as we wrap up this segment on what happens the remainder of the 2025 season, we're getting some of these inquiries on how the Dolphins will do the rest of the season or how they should do. Mick Rack says we have the possibility of winning 2 more games tops. That's 4 wins. Let's see. Pete's Take says Aaron Brewer said 8 games left and we can still finish 10-7, but 10-7 isn't possible with Tua. We're asking. I'm asking you about some of these scenarios, these wins. Look, there's no Jaden, there's no Joe Burrow, there's the Jets. That could be 4 wins right there. But are you just chipping away at your chances to get a top 5 draft pick with each victory that you get? And is winning a good thing or a bad thing to you at this point for the Dolphins?
See, I'm not even so sure about this quarterback draft class to even say, okay, like you need that top pick so that you can grab one of them. Yeah, so I'm not thinking from that perspective. I think there would be positives in seeing some guys surface with their games in the second half of the season.
Right.
You look at the schedule. I mean, no Jaden Daniels for the Washington Commanders. After that elbow injury, a gruesome one. You're playing the Saints, the Jets, even though it's over there. Before this Ravens game, I was kind of saying if they go and beat the Ravens on a Thursday night short week at home, like I was really thinking, okay, now you can start stockpiling. Like you just had this impressive game against the Falcons. If you were to beat the Ravens as well, maybe if Lamar would have been a little shaky, which he was not, and he threw 4 touchdowns, and the Dolphins just kept shooting themselves in the foot themselves, then I could have seen some kind of little run being made with what was coming about. But once you get down to 2-7 with Buffalo on the horizon, then obviously it starts to go the other way. But I wouldn't be surprised, just like we saw them pull off the stunning victory in Atlanta. This team might be good for another 1 or 2 of those kind of surprise performances, and then win a game or 2 that they should, like you expect against the Saints. Washington isn't very far off right now record-wise, and it's going to be Marcus Mariota starting instead of Jaden Daniels. So the Jets, of course, So yeah, I wouldn't be shocked. Especially no Joe Burrow and that defense for Cincinnati. A lot of things could happen.
Right.
So I could still see some positives if the Dolphins are winning some of these games and players start to build something that you could build on for the next season. So I wouldn't be bad at it.
Right.
Maybe it costs you, like, if it's Ruben Bain as opposed to someone else who, if you end up with like the seventh pick or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's always
Right.
that. But
Right.
I think you just got to draft well, because there's going to be a lot of good players available wherever the Dolphins are drafting in the first round. So it's about how they make the most of that pick.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, Furones. I'm always in favor. Well, I won't say always because I don't want to speak in absolutes. I'm usually in favor of winning, and because winning will let you know what kind of young talent you have, what kind of coaching talent you have. Are guys making improvements? Are these the dudes we can roll with in the future? Does he have some quality to his game? So let's actually see that. If that happens. So I'm in favor of winning. When we talk about winning, though, here's what I'm going to ask you. We've heard people talk about let the young talent play. The young talent's already playing, Furones. So my question to you, and here's what I think: how many players should get opportunities if you want to go the experimental route? Now, I'll throw out some names here. Greg Dulcich at tight end, Zeke Biggers, Jalen Wright, Ollie Gordon, Taj Washington, Juju Brents, Jordan Colbert, Isaiah Johnson, John Saunders, Theo Weiss, Josh Preeb, and Braden Daniels on the offensive line. I mean, and if you're going to give Jalen Wright and Ollie Gordon a look, obviously you're cutting down playing time for Achane. I'm not sure that that's going to help you very much. I just don't. When I name these names, Furones, I don't see a lot that's there. If you were talking about Quinn Ewers and Zeke Biggers, those are seventh-round picks. They're probably not going to help you, right? Josh Preeb and Braden Daniels, they're practice squad guys on a team with a bad offensive line. Greg Dulcich, he showed us something last week with 5 receptions for 49 yards or whatever it was that he had. But, Julian Hill is probably your best tight end. I mean, maybe you give Isaiah Johnson a look. Jordan Colbert would get a look at linebacker, not at safety, because he's a linebacker now. John Saunders, I could see giving him a look because I'm not sure Ife Melinfonwu or Ashton Davis is your future at safety. But those names that I called out, Dulcich, Biggers, Wright, Gordon, Juju Brents, Taj Washington, Isaiah Johnson, Theo Weiss, none of those really do anything for me. I think you're the guys that you want to look at, you're looking at when you look at the draftees of the last couple of years. By the way, if you're at the top of the draft this year, go for the trenches, right? Because you already started that with Chop Robinson and Patrick Paul and Jonas Abayinaya and Kenneth Grant. Keep going for the trenches. Don't force the quarterback pick, even if it's the Mendoza kid who's from Miami playing at Indiana. Don't force the quarterback pick. Start at the trenches. Who are the young players that you think deserve a shot? Because I think a lot of the young guys are getting a shot right now.
Yeah, I mean, the main ones I look at are, aside from the obvious, you have Kenneth Grant and Jonas Abayinaya, but I'm looking at Jaelan Phillips getting a lot of play. Dante Trader at safety, who has really gotten plenty of work, and he missed a game or defensive snaps when he had a shoulder issue. But he was also coming off the missed tackle in the open field, trying to cover for Minkah Fitzpatrick's mental error, and then. Obviously took the brunt of that, but, like a young professional, kept it moving. So Jason Marshall, who's now coming back from his hamstring injury, and you're going to see more of him try to develop in the nickel role. So you already had this big draft class that is getting that playing time. And Zeke Biggers, maybe you throw him out there, but what's his ceiling? I mean, I think it might be like his ceiling might be like Benito Jones, when I look at it. You might eventually get to see Quinn Ewers start this season the way it's going if it continues to go downward. But, maybe Theo Weiss would be a nice piece because you saw what he did in the preseason and, showed some promise. Ollie Gordon, of course, is already playing plenty. And of course, everyone would love to see him get more of a workload. The times when he's right. not getting incorporated, that seems to be what the Dolphins' downfall when they don't go to the run game enough, and Mike McDaniel gets away from that. But I think, we're already seeing right. a lot of them, and it'll be about just developing those guys for the future and then stockpiling the young talent in the coming drafts.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think that we're the guys that you name. We're seeing a lot of the young talent that you want to see. So I'm not sure that there's a whole lot left.
And maybe towards the end of the season, it's a Zach Sealer type of situation arises, like the way he was when he was picked up right. off waivers in 2019.
Right.
If you find someone like that then okay, wait, we didn't know we had something in him, and you're starting to see some of that. That's kind of what you're looking for this second half of the year. So maybe someone surfaces, and part of that could be whatever moves are made by the Dolphins here in the coming couple of hours. Where they will end up. Whoa.
Right.
And we have big news here. The Jets sent Sauce Gardner to the Colts. Speaking of,
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
According to a lot of reports breaking right now as we were talking. So it's not the Dolphins making big news, but within the AFC East, Sauce Gardner going to the Colts. So the Dolphins will face Sauce Gardner when they travel to MetLife.
Boy, that is a heck of a search. You went from Xavier Howard to Sauce Gardner. You were determined to find a cornerback if you're the Colts. So nice job by them. All right. You know what time it is now, baby. You know what time it is. It is time for one of the top 4 segments on this 4-segment show. It is the Furones bonus.
Oh! The Furones bonus.
I love it, baby. All right. So, Furones, here's what you're going to tell us today. You're going to tell us how soon can the Dolphins win a playoff game. And here's the stage setter that, again, we know that McDaniel and Tua had great talent in 2023, but they faltered, right? So do they have to have more talent to win a playoff game than they had in 2023? And look, and in the AFC, you still have to face KC, Buffalo, and Baltimore. Now New England and Denver might be surfacing. So how soon, Furones, will it take this rebuild to get a playoff victory for the Dolphins?
Impossible task given to me on the Furones bonus. This is a double bonus with how hard I'm going to have to work, how hard my mind will have to work to figure this out, because right now it is long in the future. So I'll try to pinpoint maybe what the earliest possible year could be or season could be where this happens. And I guess if we are indeed going into a rebuild, and then it might even be a delayed rebuild if you have to kind of go through the motions of 2026 with the Tua contract and you don't completely part ways and it kind of delays what we all believe will be the inevitable. I think it depends. You save yourself a year, maybe, depending on how quickly the entire rebuild occurs. But let's go back to the last rebuild that started in a 2019 season. And when did the Dolphins have a realistic shot? It was 4 years later, 2023. So if you go by that math, you're saying, all right, you got to get through 2025 first. Now 2026, if that ends up being your 2019, then you got to get through 26, 27, 28, right? That would be 19, 20, 21. And then, you're going toward the end of this decade. You're talking about 29, 30. Now, there are quicker ways to pull it off. Like we did see the Broncos very quickly when they got through the Russell Wilson saga. And then it's Sean Payton, and he's bringing in Bo Nix in the draft. And then they get right back to the playoffs this past year. Now, that's just a playoff appearance. We're talking about a playoff win for the Dolphins. And when that shot, I think realistically, this is going into the 30s. The playoff drought will go into the 2030s and 30 years. Because we're talking, It's 25 now. It's 25 now since 2000.
Yep.
And we are just breaking up the all-in attempt that will then begin a new rebuild. So it's going to take some time. I'm sorry. Please continue to log on and watch Dolphins Deep Dive with Chris Perkins and myself, assuming both of us stick around for the next 5 years. Please keep listening because the Dolphins aren't winning a playoff game until we get to the 2030s, at least.
Wow, that would be incredible. Now, I'll say this, what I favor, of course, is building the even team. So the part you left out with Denver is they have that defense. Yeah, they got Sean Payton, and yeah, they got Bo Nix, but they have that defense. And San Francisco can play defense, and Philly can play defense, and Detroit can play defense, Kansas City. So let's not leave that element out. I was so excited in 2023 when the Dolphins got Jalen Ramsey and Vic Fangio. Now both are gone. I thought that was the perfect way to complement the Tyreek, Waddle, McDaniel, Tua foursome, that you start building up that defense. And you had Christian Wilkins, and it looked, and you had traded for Chubb, and you had JP, and it looked like, Javon Holland might be able to do something. It looked like that defense was going to go somewhere, and it never did. And it's almost like they abandoned that approach, because I just don't think they got the defense anything last offseason. I know they got Kenneth Grant, the first-round pick, but as far as starting caliber players after that, they didn't really add a whole lot. You were in a bad spot at cornerback, and you had to get like Kendall Sheffield and Artie Burns, and those guys didn't work out. So you had to get Jack Jones and Rasul Douglas, and they're so-so. Iffy Melifonwu and Ashton Davis are so-so. You probably got your best help with Willie Gay and KJ Britt, but they're backups. And so I just want to see the Dolphins take an even-handed approach. The road I thought they started going down 2020 in 2023. How about this? C. Dola says the Patriots might win the AFC, and they were terrible last year. What do you say to that, Furones? They did get Drake May, but they got a new coach also in Vrabel. They've got kind of a new attitude. Why can't the Dolphins be like the Patriots?
Yes, of course, there are quicker paths. Like, you mentioned how the Broncos are quickly in contention. Yes, the Patriots are another example, although the Patriots did have to go through quite a few seasons. They made like this playoff appearance in 21, but really since Brady had departed, they were not very competitive. So that would be starting with the 2020 COVID season. Made one playoff appearance where Mac Jones and the Patriots got blown out in Buffalo, but that was it. Very low level seasons where, the Dolphins were sweeping them the past few years. Outside of that 2022 Teddy Bridgewater game, January 1st, 23, while Tua was out toward the end of that season. But yeah, there's quicker paths if you get the right. And look, even that 2020 Dolphins team, they were 10-6 the very next season, but got left out of the playoffs when it was still 6 teams that got in. So yeah, the Dolphins were rebuilding in 2019, had that roster void of talent, and then quickly they were 10-6 the next year. And look to be building something. So yes, there are paths for it to happen quickly. I say it a little bit exaggerating to say we're going into the 30s, but it just seems more likely than not that it does go the next few years, and then once you get, you're going deep into this decade, the last couple of years, and then maybe before you're really ready. But you got to get the right people. It's the right GM, making solid draft picks to build a core foundation, developing the talent, and finding the right quarterback that's going to allow you to compete. And probably some of it too is if now you got the Bills and the Patriots in your division. Like the Patriots are now the ones really giving the Bills for the run for their money in the division, winning at Buffalo, leading the AFC East. And you already had Josh Allen, who you still got to deal with for at least how many? At least another 8 to 10 years of
Yeah,
good,
yeah.
like still prime-ish Josh Allen. I don't know. He does take some hits, so you never know when he might start to deteriorate. But and now the Patriots are looking good under Mike Vrabel and Drake May. So yes, you might have to also bypass those runs too before maybe it's the Dolphins' turn in this division.
We got a couple of things in here. Oscar Rojas says, Perk, if we get the right GM, the right coach, and the right quarterback, I know there's a lot of rights in there, but we can turn this around in a year or two. Look at the Patriots. Mick Rack says the Patriots had cap space. We have none. That's true. Billy Batson Marvel says Patriots sifted through the QB room until they found that dude. So all this Patriots talk, Oscar Rojas was like you. You got to get the right GM in there, first of all. Do you think Champ Kelly is the right GM? I have no idea. I just know that he was the interim GM in Las Vegas. Right, in 2023, he was kind of in this situation, but I kind of think he has a little more authority to make moves right now. But do you have any read on Champ Kelly? Do you think he's the right? He's interviewed for some GM jobs in the past. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, given my extensive knowledge on Champ Kelly, yeah, I haven't had an introductory press conference yet with him as interim GM. Hopefully,
right.
The Dolphins make him available on Wednesday. I know Champ Kelly today has got to be very busy as an interim GM. Yeah. A few days later, handling a trade deadline for a team with a lot of assets that other teams could be inquiring about. But hopefully we do get a chance to meet him and then follow up on moves that the Dolphins may or may not make as we come down through this trade deadline. One that they already did make, of course, in Jaelan Phillips. So that would be good just to get to know him a little bit and find out why he is someone who impresses so many people. I know he from a little bit of a profile I wrote that's available on Sentinel.com that he had this history, which I learned from reading an article in The Athletic going back to when he was in Chicago with Tech, that he was out of Kentucky. He got a job as a software engineer with IBM, and then he sort of incorporated that into being more analytics driven, helping organizations through that shift of analytic and tech driven work to go with the real on the ground football scouting. So that's kind of like somewhere where his background is as a former player who was played in an indoor football league, as well as he was a Kentucky Wildcat back in his college playing days. So has been under John Elway in Denver when they were building the rosters that eventually led to the Super Bowl championship with Peyton Manning at quarterback, John Elway being in the front office at this time, not when John Elway was the quarterback, of course. So he's got that under him. He's been in Chicago with the Raiders, handled this type of caliber of duties with the Raiders, being an interim GM. So obviously a strong up-and-comer and someone who I think will be in the running for the permanent job. And we'll see what he's able to get for the organization. I think already a pretty good start getting a third-round pick for Jaelan Phillips. Many people thought it would be a fourth-rounder. Obviously, Eagles project to be picking toward the end of the third, but it's still a third-rounder. I hate when people say, well, it's basically a fourth-round pick. Well, yeah, if you got a fourth-round pick from one of the losing teams, that is still behind this third-round pick from the Eagles. So, but still, decent job on that trade, and we'll see what comes of his tenure.
Yeah, I think a third-rounder for Jaelan Phillips is absolutely outstanding. I should have said that earlier. I think that's great work. That's great work by Champ Kelly and the Dolphins. All right, Furones, let's migrate on to segment number 4, and it is prediction time, baby. This shouldn't be too tough. Dolphins against Bills, Sunday, 1 o'clock, Hard Rock Stadium. We know what the deal is. Buffalo is 1-7 against Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins in this era. 7-game winning streak. It came after the Dolphins beat them here 21-19 back in 2022. By the way, Furones, I'll let you in on this. I told you this at the game. I guess I'll let everybody else in on this. This is the third straight year the Dolphins have played Baltimore and Buffalo back-to-back. Baltimore has always been the first game, third time in the McDaniel era. Third time in the McDaniel era, they've played them back to back. It happened in 22, happened in 23. Now it's happening in 25. It was a home and home both times. Now it's a home and away. Wow. I keep getting ahead of myself. I'm looking at stuff here. It was a home and away those other two times. This time the Dolphins host. So, having said all of that and having messed up on most of it, who you got in this game?
Perk, the Dolphins have lost 7 straight games to the Buffalo Bills. They've lost 14 of the last 15. I feel like I'm promoting this like Lee Corso. I don't know why I'm doing this right now.
Right.
But they've lost 14 of the last 15 to Buffalo. This is the time that it changes and it becomes 15 of 16 and 8 straight losses. The Dolphins lose to the Buffalo Bills. Sorry for anyone I got your hopes up or your hopes down, because I think maybe people want to see the Dolphins lose and tank. I've got the Bills 31-16, and it becomes 15 of the last 16 and 8 straights with a home loss. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if the Dolphins given extra rest, like feeling like this us against the world mentality, playing at home against a division rival who you're familiar with. I wouldn't be surprised if they come out and maybe shock them a little bit, play better, which I don't think they're going to shock the Bills, because the Bills are used to actually the Dolphins playing them close the last 2 times, especially. Right. Whenever it seems like everything's against the Dolphins, they do rise up and play Buffalo close. But realistically, you can't believe that that Miami would pull off the upset. So I do have Bills 31, Dolphins 16.
This could be the last stand for this incarnation of the Dolphins, and I want to see what some of the standouts do. I'm talking about Mike McDaniel, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, Jordan Brooks, Patrick Paul, Zach Sealer. What do these guys do as a unit, as a group? Aaron Brewer also in there. What can they summon? Do they have a little bit of magic left in them? Can they outlook? I think that Riley Patterson, the Dolphins kicker, is going to be a factor in this game. 8-24. I just think the Bills are too good, and they find a way to win all the time against the Dolphins. And I say all the time, it's been 7 of 8 in the Mike McDaniel era, so it's not literally all the time, but pretty much all the time, they just find a way to win. Josh Allen finds that extra gear. They hit the 51-yard or 61-yard field goal. 61, right? It was a 61-yard field goal that they hit, right? They'll get that penalty from Jordan Poyer to help them get down the field. They'll get that fumble from Raheem Mostert. Buffalo just finds a way to win it. The Dolphins find a way to lose it. I think that's what's going to happen again. I do think it's going to be a close game, but I just think that the Bills are going to find a way to win it. And at that point, and you've got these losses mounting any more than they already have, because we see the empty seats against against the Chargers, and last week we saw some empty seats against Baltimore. We saw to the Dolphins fans if the Dolphins lose this game.
Well, all right, first and foremost, I think a lot of Buffalo fans will make the trip down. So I think the fans you'll see in the stands on Sunday, there'll be a lot of blue and red. There was already a lot of purple when the Ravens were playing, including in the press box, Perk wearing purple and black to cover the Dolphins-Ravens game. Do you know nothing about objectivity as a member of the media, Perk?
I don't look at my closet and think, what color are the Chargers wearing? I'll avoid that. I look in my closet, I say, that's clean, that's what I'm wearing. It was unfortunate. It was unfortunate, and I took some grief because I was wearing Ravens colors, but I was on the side of the winning team. Let me just say that. Let me just add that.
Wow,
So,
you're supposed to be an objective
it
member
wasn't
of the
a total
media.
loss for me.
You're not supposed to be worried about whether you're on the winning side or the losing side. You cover the game objectively as a member of the media. Perk. I can't believe we still got to teach you these things at this point.
I wear clean clothes. I'm
I
just trying
hope,
to wear clean
I hope
clothes.
as a minimum,
That's all. That's all.
minimum, you do wear clean clothes.
Exactly. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for this edition of Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk. We will see what happens in the next fewer than 3 hours, the next 2 hours and 54 minutes. We'll see how many moves the Dolphins make. If they make any moves, we'll see what happens against Buffalo. We will report back to you next week, Tuesday, noon, Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk. That is David Furones. I'm Chris Perkins. We will see you here next week.